Welcome to STAR Data Analysis Training. My name is Kelly Gilmore and I'm a member of the Academic Technology Specialist team here in DPS. And today we're going to talk to you about how to interpret your STAR data. We have a number of objectives today. We will show you how to locate and run your STAR data reports. And once you're able to locate them, we are going to talk to you about how to interpret and utilize those reports to make short-term and long-term instructional decisions inside your classroom. You have received your STAR data analysis folder. We have our training agenda, and we also have our PowerPoint packet for you to review along with us as we move through our training today. And below that we have 2 pages of STAR Early Literacy and STAR Reading definitions. You can tell the difference whether it's STAR Early Literacy or STAR Reading by looking in your upper left-hand corner of your paper, and that will designate which one you're looking at. And again, to review, your STAR Early Literacy was kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Your STAR Reading is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Below those definitions, you will see a page that reviews the different types of reports available to you inside the STAR database. And additionally, we have 5 click paths, which are handouts that will get you to the particular report you're trying to get to, including pictures and paths inside the computer to get you where you want to go. Lastly, we have DPS guidelines for the right to intervention process as well as the sit team process. Today our agenda includes a brief review of STAR basics, and then we're going to dive deeper into the STAR vocabulary that you will need to know when analyzing your STAR reports. Additionally, we are going to review the screening report, diagnostic report. We're going to have a conversation about intervention usage for STAR, and then we're going to talk about progress monitoring, goal setting, and the next steps for you in the classroom. I briefly mentioned RTI, and we included a handout for you in your packet that discusses the RTI process here at DPS. But we want you to know there are other places that you can go to get your information on RTI, including the DPS website and additional links that we've included in your PowerPoint. STAR basics. If you recall, in our STAR 101 training, we talked to you about computer adaptive technology. STAR is a computer adaptive test, and what that means is that the item difficulty within the test changes depending on the responses given by each student. A student will be given their very first item at a slightly lower than grade level difficulty level, and if the student then gets the response incorrect, then the item will get slightly easier. And if the student still answers the question incorrectly, the item will get slightly easier until it reaches a point where the student can respond correctly to that question. And then the item level will get slightly more difficult. And as the system moves through the questions, 25 in all, the computer will really hone in on the student's reading ability based on their particular responses. When you're looking at your STAR Early Literacy data, you will receive a breakdown of the diagnostic abilities of each student by 7 skill domains. And within those 7 domains, you will receive information on 41 skill sets. STAR Reading does not give you that diagnostic breakdown, but it actually uses background knowledge and vocabulary to assess the comprehension level of your student. We're going to talk now about STAR vocabulary. It's very important that you understand how STAR is defining the vocabulary terms that you will be reviewing in your reports, so that I can look at your reports and your principal can look at your reports and you can look at reports with your parents, and everybody's having the same conversation because we all have the same vocabulary terms for these reports. Let's move into STAR vocabulary. STAR has broken down their scores into 2 different types: criterion reference scores and norm reference scores. Criterion reference scores are for STAR Early Literacy reports, and it's giving you a score based on that student, based on a certain criteria or a certain standard you're assessing them on. Norm reference scores are different. It's taking information on one student and comparing them to a very large norming group of students. So your one student, for example, your 5th grade student, is being compared to a huge nationwide norming group of other 5th grade students. So you can see how your student compares to other students in the same grade. We're going to talk for a few moments about STAR early literacy vocabulary, which is different than STAR reading vocabulary. STAR early literacy scores, you will receive scaled score for each of your students. And this is an absolute score tied just to your student, and it's based on the number of items they get correct and the number of and the difficulty level of each of those items. This is a great score to use with your individual student to gauge growth. So if you look at a scale score of, for example, 550, the next STAR early literacy test they take has a scale score of 575. That shows growth for your individual student. STAR early literacy scale score range is from 300 to 900. And that, of course, is used again for your kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students. STAR early literacy also has proficiency scores. As I mentioned earlier, those 7 domain scores, and additionally those 41 skill sets, which I'll talk about in a moment. And lastly, STAR early literacy provides an estimated oral reading fluency score. Scaled score is calculated based on the difficulty of each item that the computer presents to the student, and also how many of those items the student answers correctly. Proficiency scores, again, I mentioned earlier, are those domain scores and the skill set scores that you're given in your diagnostic report. I'll talk about that in a moment. And additionally, that estimated oral reading fluency score. So it may seem strange to you that a STAR test, which doesn't hear a student read, would give you an estimated oral reading fluency score. But that is because there's a very strong correlation that STAR has determined between DIBELS and between STAR, and so they're able to give you a correlation score on estimated oral reading fluency. We will talk about that a little further as we move through these slides. There are literacy classifications that early literacy STAR test will provide, and these are very important. And when you're looking at these literacy classifications, go ahead and pull out your STAR early literacy definitions page, because in that definitions page, it gives you a description of each literacy classification. And STAR breaks it down into 4 different types. Emergent reader, which is then broken down into early emergent and late emergent. There's a transitional reader and a probable reader. If you're a 2nd grade teacher, you'd really like to see your 2nd grade students in that literacy classification of probable reader. But you may find that you have a kindergarten student who's in that probable reader classification. These literacy classifications are determined strictly off of the scale score of the students that the student receives in their test. Now, this slide just discusses again what I mentioned earlier about that scale score range from 300 to 900. So a scaled score of 325 at that very beginning of the range would mean you have an early emergent reader. And again, if you're close to 900, you're in that probable reader classification. Okay, the proficiency score slide is really the meat of the STAR early literacy data. And this you'll find in your student diagnostic report and a little bit in your class diagnostic report. Again, there's 7 literacy domains, and they're listed on this slide. And within those are 41 skill sets that really assess the diagnostic capabilities of your students. These skill scores are broken down from 0 to 100, and STAR has determined that a student with a skill score of 0 to 39 is a skill that your student is not yet ready to learn. If they receive a score between 40 and 75, the STAR data system is determining that that's a skill your student has not mastered, but is at an ability level to begin learning that skill. And if a score is above 75, so 76 to 100, the student is approaching mastery of that skill. Okay, let's just for a moment dive a little deeper into this slide, which has an example of the diagnostic report you'll be looking at for your STAR Early Literacy. So you can see here there are 4 of the 7 literacy domains. They're highlighted in yellow, and underneath those domains are some of the skill sets that are being analyzed when your student takes the STAR Early Literacy test. So if you look right up at the very top under General Readiness, you can see one of the skills at the very top is differentiating letters, and the student received a score of 90. What the computer is telling you is that 90 times out of 100, your student will respond correctly to a question asking them to differentiate their letters. If you look at the very bottom of that General Readiness square, there are 2 skills that have blue arrows. And this is when a student scores, again, between 40 and 75. So that means that the system is determining that puts the student at a readiness to learn that skill, but not a mastery of it. So completing sequences and identifying word boundaries are skills that the student is ready to learn.